When we remember a time, we remember moments. A kaleidoscope of the sights, the sounds, the emotions that remind us of the way we were. Our world. It's about time.
Tonight, Cover Stories, May 1960. Here are Linda Ellerbee and Ray Gandolf.
For the next hour, think of your television set as a time machine.
Tonight, our newsstand is chock full of cover stories and a cover-up.
Welcome to 18 Days in May and 1 Day in April, 1960. A cover story can be a big story or a big lie. What's a big story? In headline form, Catholic candidate from Camelot captures crowd. Recognized royal from Rock returns respectable. Practical princess from Palace weds worker. And this one, Russia says America's spying and Ike says Nikita's lying. What's a big lie? Russia says America's spying and Ike says Nikita's lying.
In May of 1960, Life magazine worried a lot about the national purpose. It hired people like Adlai Stevenson and Billy Graham and Walter Lippmann to try to figure out if we had a national purpose, and if so, what it was. The poet Archibald MacLeish said we had more stuff in our kitchens and garages than Louis XIV had in Versailles, and still we were lacking something intangible, something moral. So far as the tangibles were concerned, though, we were doing just fine that spring.
You are about to know the thrill of seeing that which has never been seen before. You're about to enter a beautiful, exciting, wonderful new world. The world of 1960.
And what a wonderful world it will be. America in the 60s, what could go wrong? TV and technology will give us what we need, and if there's a Ford in every future, one day it will fly.
Off into space. Man, that takes real teamwork. And here's a team of junior spacemen with an out-of-this-world breakfast.
We'll get there yet. A little vim and vigor, that's all it takes. Maybe some Cheerios. We know about those things. But there are many, many things we don't know about.
Don't know much about history. Don't know much biology. Don't know much about a science book. Don't know much about the French I took. But I do know that I love you. And I know that if you love me too, what a wonderful world this would be.
Yes, it would. But it turns out the 50s and the Cold War have one more act to play. And this will be a cover story everywhere. Saturday, April 30th. New Yorkers open the morning paper to find headlines about a Russian spy ship spotted off the coast of Long Island. Well, what do you expect from a bunch of communists? The White House. President Eisenhower's advisors know a secret that is not in the papers. In fact, the secret is in the sky. And it is the most superb spy plane of them all. And it's American. It's called the U-2. For 4 years, this high-flying spy has monitored Soviet industry and defense from 14 miles above the Soviet Union. And what the U-2 knows, only the White House and the CIA find out. The president has approved every mission. His son, John, he was an aide, and he explains.
The scheme was that Deb would approve 1 week in which to fly. And then once the week was over, they'd come in for another approval.
In Sirlik, Turkey, a U-2 that was based here, concealed here really, has been ordered to fly to Pakistan and wait for further orders. They come just before dawn. The secret flight will cover 3,800 miles in 9 hours, taking off from Pakistan, landing in Norway, and in between, cutting straight across and above the Soviet Union. Sunday morning, May Day in Red Square. Back in the USSR and in communist countries everywhere, the 1st of May is the 4th of July, without the white and blue, but with firecrackers, real ones. Khrushchev may not be thinking about firecrackers or parades. Russian radar is tracking another one of those American spy planes. What do you expect from a bunch of imperialists? The plane's altitude, 70,000 feet above the Soviet Union. The pilot's name, Francis Gary Powers. And this is no Sunday stroll he's taking. As he would say 10 years later, the first half hour over Russia was always the worst.
After that length of time, nothing happens. You sort of relax and start trying to imagine you're flying over the United States or somewhere to keep your mind off of what's down below.
What keeps his mind off the city of Sverdlovsk down below is an explosion up above, where he is.
I didn't see what hit me, but I assume it was a SAM-2 missile because it was something external to the aircraft. It was not in the aircraft itself. A second or so later, the plane went out of control, nosed over, and both wings came off, I'm sure.
The CIA had explained what to do if this happened, but Gary Powers didn't do that. And while the plane went one way, the pilot went another, dropping in unannounced on some Soviet farmers.
Well, then one of them took a pistol that I had strapped to the parachute, and they sort of caught me by the arms, and they thought they had something, which I think they did.
They surely did. Khrushchev is still presiding in Red Square. In the crowd, U.S. Ambassador Llewellyn Thompson and his wife, Jane.
Then, all of a sudden, this flurry of activity, which we saw because the stairwell came down on the diplomatic side, and they were all running in and out behind the Kremlin wall and up and down with messages, boom, boom, boom.
So Khrushchev gets the news on May Day, but sits on it for nearly a week. All that's known in Washington is that a U-2 is overdue at its destination in Norway. The man in charge of the U-2 program, Deputy CIA Director Richard Bissell.
I remember all too vividly. I had come back from being away for a day. I came back on a Sunday afternoon. I immediately had a call from the office and had to go down there. And I was told that Powers had been, his flight had not arrived, and he was presumably down and lost.
President Eisenhower gets the news from his staff secretary, General Andrew Goodpaster.
He simply took it and said, well, he would want to be kept informed, and I think we left it at that. I believe I told him the winds may blow, and he said, well, we've always known that. Neither he nor I, or anyone, I guess, thought to ask the question, could the pilot have survived?
The next day, Goodpaster and Eisenhower discussed something that the CIA director had once said about U-2 pilots.
Allen Dulles absolutely assured us that the man was well paid. He knew what the risks were, that if anything would transpire that would indicate his being captured, the plane would self-destruct. You can't ask somebody to shoot himself or shoot himself in the head. No, the plane would self-destruct.
Confident that Powers has not survived, the president approves an old CIA cover story, read that lie, which says that a weather plane out of Turkey is missing. Tuesday, May 3rd. The cover story, which has been leaked by Washington, makes its way to the United Press International newsroom in New York and is put out on the wires. On the afternoon of the 3rd, Eisenhower is reviewing the troops and attending military maneuvers at Fort Benning, Georgia. If we're worried about the Soviets outstripping us, you wouldn't know it from this, nor from a song in the top 10 extolling our exploits in World War II.
We found that German battleship was making such a fuss. We had to sink the Bismarck cause the world depends on us.
We hit the deck a-running and we spun those guns around. Yeah, we found that mighty Bismarck and we had to cut her down.
So far, Eisenhower has heard nothing from Moscow about the U-2. He doesn't care much for that phony cover story, but maybe it has worked. No news, however, is not good news. Francis Gary Powers is in Moscow at that moment under interrogation. Wednesday, May 4th. In Paris, work is underway preparing for the Four Powers Summit Conference on May 16th. In Washington, the early edition of the Washington Post carries a small front-page story on the missing plane. In the final edition, the story is dropped altogether. In Moscow, the cover story reaches Khrushchev. How sweet it is, all borscht and bologna. In his recorded memoirs, now kept at Columbia University, Khrushchev savors the moment.
We smiled with pleasure as we anticipated the discomfort which the spies who cooked up this false statement would feel when confronted with the evidence we already had in our pocket. I proposed the following plan. I would announce that the plane had been shot down, but, and this was important, I would not reveal that the pilot had been captured alive and was in our hands. Our intention here was to confuse the government circles of the United States.
So, crafty old Nikita Khrushchev had a propaganda plum that was too juicy to ignore. Later tonight, we'll recall what happened when he revealed that he had captured not only the spy plane, but the spy. But first, come back to some cover stories on a royal wedding and an execution.
Our world will continue with Cover Stories, May 1960.
Boy, there is nothing better than a vacation to recharge the old batteries. And there's nothing better than Piedmont's low vacation fares to recharge the old wallet. We are talking big, big savings on your vacation, folks. And you better jump on these low fares before the fish start jumping, because I'll tell you the truth, with fares this low, I can't believe that more people aren't taking advantage of them. So call Piedmont Airlines or your travel agent today. I wish I could tell you where I was, but it's kind of a secret.
Are you looking for a great chicken? Yes. Not me, Gail. Now shoot. Like I was saying, if you want great chicken, go to Kentucky Fried Chicken. They're famous for finger-licking good chicken, and with great fixings like hot buttermilk biscuits and fresh coleslaw. The Colonel's is always a great place to get a great meal. You see, great chicken's not so hard to find.
Kentucky Fried Chicken, we do chicken right.
She talked me into it.
Yes.
Dear Serts, when Barney told me that the new dispatcher took me off night flights, I couldn't wait to thank him.
Only Serts has fresh flavor and Retsin to keep your breath face-to-face fresh. Serts and sugar-free Serts.
When you're allergy sensitive, your next attack may be only a breath away. For relief, depend on Benadryl. Doctors have prescribed it more than any allergy medication ever. Benadryl from Park Davis.
This is the new shape of tough, the new 87 big Ford pickup. And to prove its new toughness and power, we're going to haul this Chevy up this monster mountain of boulders while towing this Dodge. And this year a GMC pickup too. This new aerodynamic Ford has the biggest V8 engine and a new multi-port fuel-injected 6 standard. And there's more news. Now there's a 6-year, 60,000-mile powertrain warranty on all 87 Ford light trucks.
Now get 3.9% financing or $600 cash back from Ford.
Friday, Mother has done it again.
My husband is 12 inches tall. Now, what are you going to do about it?
Meet the Charmings. Then Roy Scheider takes you on a shark hunt. Jaws 2, tomorrow.
Welcome back to May 1960. While politicians play with truth in Washington, a play about truth opens in New York. It's the night of May 3rd, before the curtain rises. A perfect time to be at the Sullivan Street Playhouse. The Fantastics, a musical about a boy, a girl, 2 fathers, and a wall. That's all. It's not a big play, this one, but it's important. Try to remember. I'll tell you why later. Or you could be up on Broadway, watching another play, a musical that oversimplifies truth, about a teenage idol who gets drafted. This one is a big play. And meanwhile, for the first time since he got out of the Army, the real teenage idol will be seen on TV and below the waist. That's okay now. There's not a whole lot of shaking going on anymore.
I'm gonna stick like glue. Stick because I'm stuck on you.
If the record raised a ruckus, it came from the crowd now and not the music. The music was milder, and even when it was well done, it was medium, but perfect for television. The party is May 12th. Frank Sinatra welcomes Elvis Presley to the middle of the road, where the money is.
Welcome home, Elvis. For my darling, I love you.
Man, that
That's pretty.
And I always will.
We love you, Conrad. Oh, yes, we do.
Conrad? If Elvis and rock and roll seemed bleached white on TV, the Broadway send-up of teenagers, their music, and their idol, who got drafted, bye-bye, Birdie, was dripping with cute. Critics and grown-ups loved it.
Oh, one last kiss. Oh, give me one last kiss. It never felt like this. No, never felt like this.
This was the first rock and roll musical comedy. The comedy part was there was no real rock and roll in the first rock and roll musical comedy. But there is a song about Ed Sullivan, and that's pretty funny.
We'll be coast to coast with our favorite host, Ed Sullivan.
Creator, producer, Edward Padula.
What we were trying to do was to spoof the adulation of our heroes like Presley, the pinning of teenagers to each other, committing themselves to each other, which caused havoc in the families, and the use of the telephone.
Hi, Nancy. Hi, Helen. What's the story? Morning glory. What's the tale? Nightingale. Tell me quick about Hugo and Kim.
The grown-ups sing better. Dick Van Dyke as the wimpy bachelor. Paul Lynde as the wimpy father. Charles Nelson Riley, understudy to both wimps. Bad memory, good feet.
I remember the first couple of times I danced, the spotlights were up in the balcony. I looked up and I'm dancing and I thought, what am I doing here, trying to dance on Broadway? And the problem with, the taps were perfect. I didn't kick a teenager. I got such applause, but I couldn't remember the lyrics because I would be so panicked. You understand? I got the steps. And the lyrics would be, you know, instead of put on a happy face, I would say, put on a zavi, lift out a Davis day. And you couldn't stop, and spread sabu, dabu day.
And spread sunshine all over the place. Just put on a happy face.
And they called it puppy love.
Not to their faces, I'll bet. She's almost 30. He's a commoner. She's a princess. Her sister is queen. Margaret Rose Windsor. Anthony Armstrong Jones. No, you don't call it puppy love. You call it good television. And television covers the wedding, fully, for the first time. The royal family was used to being watched, but not on television. Peter Dimmock organized the coverage for the BBC.
The establishment thought that television was very much a peeping Tom, and therefore they would try and keep what I thought at the time were rather petty restrictions. And they said, under no circumstances could we look at them head-on when they were taking their vows.
I, Anthony Charles Robert.
I, Anthony Charles Robert.
Take thee, Margaret Rose.
Take thee, Margaret Rose.
Well, of course, that seems very silly and old-fashioned in this day and age.
La Princesse Margaret.
Television loves a costume party. Came early, stayed late, invited millions of its closest friends to come along and enjoy the reception, live. Life always went to the party, but American TV stayed home, and this time the Brits brought the bundle. Royal Air Force Vulcan bombers hightailed it across the Atlantic, carrying videotape. A communication satellite could have beat them, but there weren't any. And this was complicated enough.
Takeoff will be at 1200 and 1300 hours approximately on Friday, May 6th.
The pictures were recorded at London Airport and then put onto the Vulcan bomber. Flown to Canada, where they landed, and then the pictures were immediately transmitted by CVC and picked up by the American network.
Okay, roll videotape.
The royal wedding transfixed the world for a day. One American had fascinated it for years.
You got any views on the Carol Chessman case?
For nearly 12 years, Carol Chessman had lived on death row in California's San Quentin prison, convicted of kidnapping with bodily harm during a series of rapes. He wrote 4 books in prison, while his execution was postponed 8 times. All the while, he maintained his innocence. His lawyer, Rosalie Asher.
He was, and it was apparent, highly intelligent. He was also highly volatile. At times, he could be very difficult to get along with, and he could be utterly charming as well. He was largely self-taught and exceedingly well-read.
Because Chessman was eloquent, because he had not killed anyone, because much of the world considered his execution barbaric, it provoked an international outrage, except in California, whose governor was Pat Brown. The U.S. Supreme Court had refused 17 times to review Chessman's conviction. The California Supreme Court could recommend clemency, but didn't. Brown did not have that power.
The court has twice been asked to make a recommendation for clemency and has twice refused. Under any reasonable concept of what is intended by the Constitution, I am now powerless.
If I had commuted a sentence from death to life, even with the permission of the Supreme Court, I think they would have recalled me. I think the feeling against Chessman was so strong. They felt that he was a vicious, bad rapist and that he should die. And the sympathy of so many people around the world had no effect upon it whatsoever.
And so on the morning of May 2nd, as they had so many times before, protesters kept a vigil. They would not keep any more. A little before 10 o'clock, the witnesses arrived. Among them, reporter Eleanor Garner Hanna, who had been invited by Chessman.
The prison officials took us into a little side room and briefed us about more or less what we could expect. And one of them gave me an ampule of ammonia that I could break if I felt faint.
Chessman entered the gas chamber at approximately 2 minutes after 10.
I sat him down. He was 3 or 4 feet from me. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I don't know what I looked like. Pretty distressed, stricken, I guess. And he just shook his head, and he says, "Take it easy." And then he said, "Tell Rosalie I said goodbye."
And the pellets, as you all know, was dropped at 10:03 1/4.
We could hear that click when the lethal pellets were dropped, and he heard it, of course, and he simply turned his head away and started taking deep breaths, as much as those straps across his chest would permit. Finally, one of the times his head went down. It didn't come up again, and I saw a tremor run all through him.
And he was pronounced dead at 10:12.
We went outside, and it was one of those gorgeous days on the bay. I just sucked in that air by the lungful, and Chessman had told me that the guards had told him that they'd walk out from there, and, just all they could think about was that they were glad to be alive. Well, it wasn't all I could think about, but it was a good day to be alive if you didn't have to watch somebody being put to death.
The day after Chessman died, America held its 7th annual Civil Defense Drill. The good news in New York was the announcement that this time, when the theoretical nuclear attack was over, there were only 9 million theoretically dead New Yorkers. It was not the big story. The big story was a ghost who came back to haunt America, and pulling the covers over your head wouldn't help. Come back yourself and see.
Our World continues. Cover Stories, May 1960.
With Dexatrim, you're not hungry, and you end up losing weight.
Fact. Doctors recommend Dexatrim's non-prescription medicine most to help lose weight.
Dexatrim really works.
Fact. Nothing works harder than Dexatrim to control your appetite so you can lose weight.
Hello, Mrs. Johnson.
Why, hello, Merlin.
I see you're still making Easter baskets for the neighborhood kids.
Well, it just isn't Easter without an Easter basket.
My friends at FTD feel the same way.
Well, they should.
That's why they created the FTD Glory of Spring Bouquet. Colorful basket filled with flowers.
Well, those FTD folks know what they're doing.
They sure do. Happy Easter, Mrs. Johnson.
Happy Easter, Merlin. Happy Easter, Merlin.
The Glory of Spring Bouquet. Ask your florist to send one FTD.
Here's from home, how far I've roamed. I feel so far away. Happy times we used to know, have them back today.
With American Airlines Super Sale fares, now's the time to go see someone special.
The feelings we all share. We're American Airlines, something special in the air.
Hello, darling. Elvira here. I don't know what you're doing right now, but if you're doing it near a phone, dial 1-800-MEGABUCKS, because the 50th caller is going to win $1,000 in the Coors Light Spring Green Sweepstakes. Feel lucky? Give me a call.
What's this, tough guy? Aftershave skin conditioner. I know. I thought I was the only guy with sensitive skin. Every time I shave, I get it right here.
What do you fellas use? Because shaving irritates my whole face.
After. Try it. Looks different. Oh, it's rich. It's a lotion. After soothes razor scrape sensitive skin.
Hey, this feels great. And smells good, too. Terrific.
Sensible care for sensitive skin. Aftershave Skin Conditioner.
By Menon.
Our world will be right back.
Saturday.
Are you afraid of me?
A lonely girl.
Don't worry.
Finds a friend in Starman.
She likes me.
Then.
We got a leak in this department.
Nowhere to run.
How did they find us?
And nowhere to hide for O'Hara. Saturday.